Hey everybody, welcome to the Founders Mentality. We made it. This is episode number 20. I feel like that's a big milestone, even though there's plenty of podcasts with hundreds or thousands of episodes, but getting to those round numbers is always fun. So today, I wanted to do something different. If you're watching the video, you're seeing I'm not wearing my shirt, and that's the first time I haven't worn my company's shirt, probably 2 years. It feels a little strange, but this company that I'm repping right now, this is a rock star here in Minnesota in the tech scene. And so I wanted to have them on the show, and I thought I'd represent a little bit. The other thing that is really fun about this one is the person that I have on here. He's done some absolutely incredible things with his team. His team has been growing like absolutely crazy. And so we wanted to have him into the Founders Mentality and talk about this journey and what this has all been about. I'm going to let him introduce himself like I always do. That's all I'm going to say for now. So Charlie, welcome to the Founders Mentality.
Thanks for having me, Josh.
You're welcome.
Really appreciate it.
Yeah. So this is exciting for me. I mean, your company has just absolutely exploded. I remember first getting introduced to Sezzle through Paul, your co-founder, probably 8 months ago, when my product was literally still just a clickable prototype. I was introduced to him through someone in the beta program that I was in. He was kind enough to have a burger with me and said, look, when you get this to a point, I'm happy to bring this into the team. So Sezzle was literally my first beta testing company.
That's pretty cool.
For my product. So I have a little bit of a emotional connection to you guys.
Yeah.
So that's fun. So big shout out to Paul and a big thanks to Paul. But we're seeing Sezzle in the news all the time. Let's start really quickly with what is Sezzle? Just the elevator pitch.
Yeah, we're a payment platform that allows consumers to split up a purchase into 4 interest-free installments. You know, plain and simple. Users create accounts with us very much like they would with PayPal. And then on subsequent checkouts, we really simplify the checkout.
Yeah.
Because once the user signed in, we try to keep them signed in like an Uber or Lyft, make the checkout easy. And so every time you check out with us, we split it up into 4.
Yep. And so this is not a credit card. This is not taking out credit. This is...
Well, it is credit in a way. It's a digital credit. You know, I don't shy away from saying the word credit, but it's a safe credit for young consumers. So we're extending credit to them, but they can only get so deep into debt with our product, essentially.
Right.
And a lot of times when you read our reviews from consumers, they view it as a budgeting tool.
Right.
So it's, a lot of times I say it's a training wheels for credit.
Yeah. It's credit with a predefined plan of very quick payoff.
Yeah, it's like a charge card. You're supposed to pay it off.
I like that.
So one of the problems with credit cards with young consumers, I mean, I got a credit card when I was 18. I did okay with it. Yeah. But a lot of people didn't. They got in a lot of debt.
I did not.
Bankruptcies. There you go.
Yeah.
So a lot of people got into bankruptcies, and it's because it just got too easy to spend too much. And so that was a danger for young consumers. Our product prevents that.
Right. I like that. Okay, great. So how did we get here? What is your background first? Is this your first startup? Have you done this before? Have you been part of other founding teams? Like, how did you get this itch to start a business right now with this?
You know, it's funny. I've always had an itch to start a business when I was younger. I wasn't like the kid that did a lemonade stand at all.
Right.
I probably was too lazy to do that when I was younger. But I was really tech focused. So I did engineering undergrad. I did a lot of tinkering with computers, built my own computers, my own software development. And then my first job out of school was in software development. So not engineering, just right into software development. And then during that time period, I was always thinking about, what if we did this, or what if we built that? But I didn't have any guidance about how do you launch a company.
Right.
You know, so didn't know how to get it off the ground, even though a lot of the ideas I was thinking about probably would have been workable ideas. Yeah. And then I went to business school in 2008. And then during that time period, it was actually a downturn in the economy.
Yep, I remember.
Really hard to get a job. And I view that as like the push out of the nest.
Yeah.
You know, we had an idea, and the idea was around mobile payments for parking. Yep. And I was parking at a parking lot at the University of Minnesota Carlson School. And there's a lot where you had to take dollar bills, stuff it into an envelope, write your license plate on it. Right. And I was like, how the hell does this still exist? And I called my cousin, told him about it, and my prior job was in software for parking. And I was like, perfect. We have a perfect story here. My background's in parking, a tech-enabled company to solve a problem, and that's where we started Passport. So I started my first company in 2010.
So that's interesting to me, just because I actually started my first company at the exact same time. Which was a very interesting time to be starting a business.
A lot of people started companies around that time period.
Right.
Because of the economy.
Because of the economy. Yeah. You had to do something, right? That's very, very interesting. So how long did you run that business? How fast did that team grow? What did it turn into?
So that was an interesting journey.
Yeah.
Like for so many perspectives in that journey, but I took a lot of lumps.
Yeah.
Learned the hard way a lot of times. I've never really had a mentor.
Sure.
To build a company.
Okay.
And so neither did my co-founder at Passport.
Yeah.
And so we were basically just learning the hard way.
Yeah.
Which sometimes is the right way to learn.
Yeah.
But I remember starting that company and thinking people would say a lot of companies fail.
Yeah.
And you probably have the same. I mean, if you're a founder, you kind of have a little bit of ego.
Yeah.
It's not me. It's someone else.
Right.
But I can tell you what I learned was it is really hard to start a company.
Yeah.
And we almost failed probably multiple times.
Yep.
Sezzle's had near failures along the way.
Yeah.
It's just really hard to start a company.
Yeah.
And so at Passport, I learned the hard way a lot of the way through that company. And we finally found product market fit.
Yep.
We finally started to get momentum and then realized what it takes to get like escape velocity as a company. And that company is now leading the way in parking and transportation.
Right.
But it was a hard journey. And then for me to take that learning to Sezzle, I think has really helped us along the way too, because we've skipped some of those lumps along the way.
So you talk about not having mentors in that first company, but I would assume at this stage you've learned to surround yourself with mentors. I mean, who are some of the people that really inspired and helped you while you were getting Sezzle off the ground, while you were thinking of that and deciding to move forward?
We've added a lot of advisors.
Yeah.
You call them mentors, call them advisors.
Yeah.
What we did is we were going into a payment space. So my prior company was in payments.
Yeah.
So again, leveraging something that I'd done in my past. And then Paul Paradis, my co-founder, he had never had any experience in payments.
Right.
And so we realized that was a weakness. So I had some experience in payments, but nothing in the retail space.
Okay.
Paul had a little bit of retail because of his prior jobs. Yeah. But we weren't strong there. And so what we did is we realized wherever we're weak, we tried to pull in advisors to make sure that we were well educated on areas that we felt we were weaker.
Yeah.
So that's what we have done at Sezzle is we've really pulled in advisors to help.
Yeah, and I hope that anybody listening to the podcast right now listens very closely to that, because it is impossible to be strong at everything that you need to be strong at when you're starting a business.
Definitely.
It's absolutely impossible.
We probably have a dozen advisors
you
that
have
are close
to
the company.
You have to, right? And I would say I do as well, right? I probably honestly have more than a dozen because I think you're a smarter gentleman than I am, but I have many more than 12 advisors, and I rely on them every day.
Yeah.
And I bother them all the time when, hey, this just came up and I need to make sure that I'm making the right decision next and quickly. Right?
And you know who else ends up being your advisors are your investors.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely.
I mean, people are always scared to take on more investors. I hear that sometimes I'm worried about the investor. They're going to tinker my business. They're going to distract me. Actually, I think if you're really open and transparent about where the company is and give monthly updates, which I really have pushed our company to do to our investors. What you find is when those investors get those monthly updates, good or bad, you get a lot of feedback.
Yeah, it's, full transparency. So you have shared those updates with me, which I really appreciate, just one version of it so that I could look at it, because that was an area where, up to this point, I haven't had to give those kind of updates to my investors, right? And so far, for the most part, everybody's been happy with, here's a phone call, here's a quick update, it's all jovial and it's good to go. But I really appreciated, we had a conversation recently and we were talking about that, and you said, look, Josh, this is what I do for my investors, right? Maybe you should think about doing something like this. It was great to look into that. Now it's something that in full transparency, I haven't had a chance to really even start working on, because I am in the throes of wrapping up this seed round. We have just a handful of weeks left to do this. We got to close this successfully. And then at the same time, it's the double whammy with this is Startup Week, right? So welcome to absolute madness. Startup Week in Minnesota is basically better than Christmas, in my opinion, right? I love Startup Week, but I'm speaking on 3 panels. My company was nominated for an award, so I get to go to that.
Minnesota Cup.
Yep. So there's all these things happening, right? It's just an insane week. So I'll get to that when I can, as soon as I can. But no, anyone listening, that is something that, no matter how you do it, you're very detailed in how you update your investors. I have been more off the cuff, right? But no matter how you do it, that is one learning that I've extracted from companies that have failed or succeeded, is you need to make sure your investors know what is going on.
Yeah.
Because when you get that first check from them, that doesn't mean the party's over. That doesn't mean now you can go do whatever you want. You actually need to bring those people with you. There have been a lot of companies, and there have been companies locally that have not been able to keep going solely because their original group of founders lost trust.
Yeah.
And that was the message that the new investors looking at the opportunity
Absolutely.
took. Right? And so you need to do that.
And
right?
it says, like, to give that, to further that, we actually, our first business model was a failure. We actually launched with the idea that we would be a debit payment system.
Okay.
You pay with your bank at checkout.
Okay.
So like a Venmo for checkout.
Yep.
And that product really struggled.
How long did you give that before you called it quits?
So we launched in 2016. It
Yep.
took about a year to build the product
Yep.
and get the team together. And then we launched that product in February of 2017.
Yeah.
And from February to May was like our launch period.
Yep.
And we tested everything under the sun. So
Yeah.
Paul was on the BD side of things. I was more on the product side of things.
Yep.
And I think Paul got like 13 or 14 merchants on board.
Yep.
And then the product struggled to get the consumer on board.
Yep.
And if you struggle to get the consumer on board, our pitch to the merchant was, this is an ACH payment.
Right.
It lowers your costs. But if you're not getting anyone to use it, there's no cost lowering. And basically, when we realized we needed to pivot was when the next merchant asks, tell me about your success at your other merchants.
Yes.
And then when you know that your story is horrible,
Yep.
you're dead in the water.
Right.
So that's when we realized we needed to pivot. And then we looked at the data point. The data point that we were building the company around was that young people were paying with debit.
Yeah.
And you could look at this two ways. You could say it's a preference or it's a lack of access to credit.
Right.
We looked at it as a preference.
Yeah.
And so we flipped over to a lack of access.
Yeah.
And then the moment we did that, it just took off. But along the way, we were updating our investors about a bad story.
Right.
Like, this is not working.
Right.
We're trying this. We're trying that.
But you were being clear about it.
Oh, yeah, we were being clear.
Yeah.
I think we're optimistic, so we were probably...
Right.
It was optimistic, but if you were an investor, you probably could read between the lines that it's not going as well as it was hoped.
Right.
And then so when we pivoted, I think the great story was we pivoted and then we started to get traction.
Yeah.
And we had a number of investors that were in our seed round that followed on in a bridge to help keep us going because they're like, wow, look at how hard these guys are working.
Right.
They figured it out.
Yeah.
Let's further the investment, and that helped.
Yeah. No, that's incredible, right? So, there's so many nuggets you can extract from that, but number one, fail fast, right? So the ability to, if it's not working, just pivot, right?
Yeah.
You need to be able to
and
pivot.
you have to go by your gut to know that.
Yes.
It really is. You can ask around all you want.
Yeah.
But I don't know what the key finding was. I think I figured out now that it's when we had the bad story to the next merchant.
Yeah.
Because once you don't have a good story, no one's going to sign up for you. That's probably was the key moment.
Yeah. Yeah.
But it took some convincing. Like, so when you go out there and you raise a lot of money, you've raised a lot of money for your company.
Yeah.
And you raise it on this idea of we're going to do X.
Right.
But in the end, the investor really just wants to put in Y and get Z.
Absolutely.
They just want to make money. They
Absolutely.
don't necessarily care about the mission.
Right.
They care more about, like, I'd love to make a return on this.
This is, I've heard this message so many times that it has to be true now, right? It just has to be. So anyone that's listening that's saying, no, that can't be, no, that has to be true. Because I've heard multiple founders say the exact same thing, that they started with an idea. Look, getting an MVP out in front of customers, getting that first product out there in front of them, the best thing you can do is just shut up and listen at that point, because they're going to tell you what you created.
Yep.
Right? So with your MVP, it was more them telling you this isn't working and this is why it's not working, and so you had to pivot a little bit there. With my product, we had a whole bunch of different bells and whistles we could have built into this, and the hypothesis early on was that it was going to be primarily a relationship-driven, a relationship-building portal. I thought that's what was missing in the sales cycle.
Yep.
What actually was missing, what we found out once we got it in people's hands, was that the asset distribution, the way that we organized that was where we were helping them win deals. It had so much less to do with the relationship portion of it. We had to immediately pivot our strategy on, what are we really focusing on in the development of this? It's organization, right? And now that's been validated recently. Gartner did a survey that I put up on LinkedIn. I don't know if you saw this, but this was tremendous for my business because Gartner put out a study that the biggest pain point in B2B sales is buyer confidence. And they went on to say that it's not buyers' confidence in the salesperson. It has nothing to do with that. It is buyers' confidence in themselves that they're making the right decision, because they are thrown all kinds of things to review, right? Whether they're looking at a website themselves to diagnose their problems, right? And figure out the solution, or whether the salesperson is sending materials to them to help them through the way. And maybe those materials aren't as poignant as they need to be or direct as they need to be. So regardless, that article was great for me because it, again, just validated what we had decided to pivot to do. I think along those lines, there's been a ton of validation for Sezzle in this pivot, right? You cannot, and maybe it's because I'm connected to a handful of people at Sezzle, but I cannot go to LinkedIn without seeing a news article on new things that are happening. You recently IPO'd. You recently formed partnerships with some of the biggest companies in the world. Visa, right? Okay.
Not bad.
Not bad, right? So, and this has happened in just a few short years, right? There's some amazing things happening there. So, I mean, walk me through some of those successes that you've been having now with Sezzle.
I think it really just comes with momentum.
Okay.
You know, so both companies I've started, you start small.
Yeah.
And I think it's really the right way to start. It's start with smaller merchants, because you were mentioning about the buyer behavior.
Yeah.
When you have a small retailer or a small customer, they're really thinking about, I got to move. And so they're less worried about, I have this concept like the CYA bubble, the cover your ass bubble.
Yes.
And with a small merchant, the mom and pop merchant, they don't have that. It doesn't exist.
Yeah.
Because there's no CYA. It's just, I got to grow.
Right.
And so when you present your product to them, they're like, that might help me. I'm going to do it.
Right.
And then what you do is you test out your product with them. They help you improve it.
Yeah.
You get to bigger and bigger merchants. Yeah. And then the CYA bubble grows.
Yeah.
But then you are also more proven.
Yeah.
And then as you start to get to the largest customers, you've already got a great case study for them. And so they're less worried. The buyer friction is like, hey, Josh's sales reach is awesome. I've heard about it.
Right.
Install it.
Yep.
So I think what that also does, though, is as you're spinning up the company, it just starts to create momentum.
Yes.
And so like a lot of the things that are happening right now for Sezzle are just because of this built up momentum, and they're all just starting to come to fruition right now.
I mean, it's been tremendous momentum. So how many years now has Sezzle been in existence?
So we're approaching 4 years in January.
4 years. When you started, I heard you say that Paul was acting as your salesperson in those early days. Was he the sole salesperson?
Pretty much. I mean, I would help there, here and there, but I was doing product development.
What was the team size day one?
It was me and Paul, basically,
okay.
Day one, and we had a couple developers.
How many employees do we have today?
Like 100 or so, somewhere in that range. With
Somewhere
full-time, part-time,
yeah. Somewhere around 100 employees in 4 years.
Yeah.
I mean, pretty epic.
Yeah.
I mean,
it's been a pretty amazing journey. And that's what happens when you have product market fit, though.
Right.
It starts to take off.
Absolutely. I mean, I've seen you guys move offices now, I think 3 times. So, right? In a very short window.
We had a bridge office there where we had spent like 5 months in the office.
You just keep outgrowing it.
Yeah.
It's just like me and my entire wardrobe. It just doesn't fit. No, it's great.
Mine too.
I know, isn't it great? Welcome to startup life.
Yeah.
No, it's really, really great, and it's so fun to see it, and it's also fun just selfishly in Minnesota. It's fun to see a company truly winning in Minnesota, right, in the tech space, because I think we are starting to get noticed outside of Minnesota, right? This Silicon Prairie thing that we have going on, people are starting to take notice. We're starting to see some real talent from Silicon Valley moving here, right, to join some of these companies.
It's a great place to build a company.
It really is.
It's hard to fundraise here.
It is.
That is true. It's hard to fundraise early stage here.
Yep.
But it was harder to fundraise for me in Charlotte. Passport we built in Charlotte.
Yep.
So I've done that in 2 smaller cities.
Yeah.
Minneapolis is a little bit better.
Yeah.
But what's fantastic here, first of all, is like the startup support.
Yes.
Minnesota Cup.
Yep.
You've got Beta. You've got Twin Cities Startup Week.
Yep.
That is phenomenal.
Yeah.
It's more on the funding side where we're a little bit weaker still.
Yeah.
But I think once you get past the early stage funding, it's a great place to build a company.
So I heard Robert Weber. It was at a Beta event that he was on a panel, and he made a statement. You know Robert, right? So he made a statement about what he sees in like the Silicon Valley is what we need to start seeing in Minnesota, and what that is companies that are successful, that are acquired, need to start giving more of their employees options and shares in the business, so that when that business is successful, they can move on and create their own dreams and hire their own employees and move on.
That's a lot of what it needs. Absolutely. That's what happened in Silicon Valley.
Yeah.
And if you look at the industries in the Minneapolis area that are really, really strong, it's healthcare.
Yeah. Yeah.
So what you really need to have an explosive startup ecosystem is a flagship company.
Yeah.
So the flagship companies here have been medical, which is why we're a medical ecosystem.
Right.
So, fingers crossed, knock on wood, Sezzle becomes something huge.
Yeah.
Maybe we become a FinTech
Yeah.
hub. Because I know one thing we believe in is we want all of our teammates in our company to have options and have equity in the company.
Yeah.
And if this becomes a mega company, you're right.
Yeah.
Some people will come out of this with a lot of experience.
Yep.
And then investors will have a lot of trust in them because
Yes.
they've been a part of something that has grown really large.
Yep.
And perhaps that leads to spinouts.
Well, it goes back to what you led off with. When you're building a company, you need to have a good story around why you should build that company.
Definitely.
Right? Because anybody can have an idea, and anybody can start a company, but not just anybody can make a company successful, and not just anybody can sell that vision to investors, clients, employees, hard. Right? Like, you need to really be the person to lead that, right? Your background lended itself to that very well, and I can absolutely see that people working at Sezzle right now will have an amazing story if all things go well with this, right?
Definitely.
And everything looks good right now.
Yeah,
so
everything's going great right now.
No reason to be worried just yet, right?
No, it's looking good. Got to keep it working. Keep working hard.
Yeah.
To make it keep on heading the right direction.
What's next? What's next for Sezzle?
Well, our goal is to basically, I mentioned Venmo earlier.
Yeah.
I think, when people have asked our mission as a company,
yeah,
our goal is to be a household name, like a Venmo.
Yeah.
But thought of it in a positive way. I think if we accomplish that, where you could mention it out at a bar, hey, I work at Sezzle.
Right.
Person knows what it is and they think really good thoughts of it.
Right.
That's the win.
Yeah.
So that's what we're trying to do.
Well, and the beauty is that, I would say that is achievable because so many merchant sites that you go to, ultimately all roads lead to the shopping cart, right? That's where you're going to go.
Yeah.
And when you get there, you have the brand recognition right there, right? So it'll take those interactions, right, where it's multiple times before someone actually stops and thinks, what is that thing?
Yeah.
What is that green flame looking thing that I'm seeing on the screen right now, right?
Yeah.
Why should I even pay attention?
It takes impressions.
Yep.
It's a branding exercise.
Yep. But that marketing is built into how your product works on those merchant sites.
Exactly.
So it's perfect.
So the consumer sees us on merchant sites.
Yep.
They keep on seeing us, and maybe they were hesitant to use this right away.
Yeah.
But the more the impressions happen.
Yep.
And they'll hear one of their friends mention that they used it, and then all of a sudden it's like, I've seen it 10 times.
Yep.
My friend mentioned it.
Yep.
I should try it out.
Well, and it's sticky because if this is the first time you've come across this, if you didn't know that this even existed, this form of credit, this is the kind of thing that you tell people about, right?
Yeah, for sure.
Especially in more the millennial market, I think, where they're probably more likely to embrace a technology like that. Maybe let's talk about that real quick. What are you seeing from adoption from the user base? Did I just make a totally inaccurate statement, or is it more millennials that are embracing this, or is this kind of across the board?
You nailed it.
Okay.
It's Gen Z and millennials.
Okay.
65% of our users are under the age of 35.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow.
So it is a young consumer base.
Yeah.
They primarily pay with debit cards in our system. So the data point matches.
Yeah.
A lot of these users have debit cards.
Yeah.
And so we really view this as the training wheels for credit.
Right. Okay, last thing I want to ask you about, because I think that this is always important in the creation story of any business. So I mentioned in the very beginning, I know Paul. Paul's a great guy. Where did you meet Paul? How was it decided that you and Paul were going to start a business together? And there is another co-founder as well, right?
Brackey.
So I shouldn't leave people out here. So tell me kind of about this story of selecting these people that you were going to grow a business with and actually taking that plunge.
So Paul and I went to business school together.
Okay.
And we met on the ping pong table.
Okay.
That's where we really met. But we were a part of a consulting enterprise where you did a lot of real world projects at business school.
Yeah.
And those are pressure filled projects.
Yeah.
Even though it's it's business school, it's just school,
right.
But it's still pressure building.
Yeah.
And he was one of those people that you could count on.
Yeah.
And when you're building a business, that's who you want as your co-founder.
Right.
Someone that you can count on.
Yeah.
And so when I was at Passport down in Charlotte, I was trying to recruit Paul down there.
Yeah.
Because I wanted him on the team there.
Right.
But he couldn't move his family. He didn't want to move. So when I moved on from Passport, one of my first calls was to Paul.
Yeah.
Like, hey, I'm free of Passport now. Do you want to start something?
Yeah.
And he was in that right position at right time.
Yeah.
And just the stars aligned. And so that's why we started out.
Okay.
And then Killian Brackey was one of our earliest hires on the team.
All right.
And he was critical to building out our tech.
Okay.
So he's joined like in month 6 or so. You know, it's pretty early on.
Right.
But, which is why he's one of the co-founders, in my opinion.
Yeah, it's early enough.
Exactly.
It's early enough, made a large enough contribution.
Exactly.
There you go.
Exactly.
That's great. That's great. Yeah, I mean, I think, you know, it's always hard when you're building that first team. I mean, yes, you do need to find people that you know are dependable, that you can count on. It's interesting to me that you guys were friends, right? Because sometimes you got to be careful with that friend thing, right? Because, you know, it's hard to manage your friends. It's hard to have hard conversations with your friends.
Totally.
Yeah.
And I think the key for us was we worked on projects together.
Yeah.
That helped.
Yeah.
Knowing that.
Right. Knowing how he responds to criticism or demands being placed on him from outside forces or all those things.
Absolutely.
Yeah. No. And he's a great guy. I'm going to start my next business with him. So I'm just going to steal. No,
just
I'm
waiting.
Kidding. I'm totally kidding. I might not be kidding. No, he's a great guy. He's very smart, very welcoming. So yeah, I would definitely keep him close as well, and I'll have to meet the other co-founder because I've never met.
Stop by. We're close by.
I'll swing over. I'll just wear my shirt and let myself in. So no, this has been awesome for me. Thank you so much for being on this.
Thanks for having me.
Our 20th episode. I wanted to have a rocket ship in Minnesota on for the 20th episode. I just thought it kind of needed to be that way. So this has been really, really great. I'd love to have you back again in maybe like 6 or 12 months. Let's just do another follow-up.
I think it'd be awesome.
See where Sezzle's at then. See what galaxy this rocket has reached at that point, right?
For sure.
And we'll just, you know, if anybody listening isn't following Sezzle on, you know, especially LinkedIn, but, you know, in the news, start following Sezzle. I mean, this has been a pretty exciting role that you guys are on right now, and I think everybody should pay attention to what's been happening with this because, like I said before, this is good for Minnesota. This is very good for Minnesota, right? This is bringing a lot of attention, and it's not just. I mean, this is bringing attention. You IPO'd in Australia. This is bringing attention outside of the United States at this point. True. That's pretty cool.
Yeah.
Right. By the way, I also have a customer in Australia now as well, so I'm following you out there. That just happened the other day. I don't know how it happened, but it happened. So,
that's funny.
Yeah, so there we go. All right, well, thanks again, everybody, for joining, and we'll be releasing our next episode in just 2 weeks like we always do, so we'll talk to you then. Bye.